Are you truly present in your relationships, or are you just going through the motions? Today, we're exploring how intentional living can help us build deeper, more meaningful connections with the significant people in our lives. Whether it's your spouse, your kids, or your closest friends, living with purpose can transform these relationships for the better.
Welcome to Iron Strengthens Iron, the podcast where we explore how faith, wellness, and biblical principles empower men to live more resilient and purpose-driven lives. I'm Dr. Kevin T. Hadaway, a family physician, joined by my brother, Dr. Michael E. Hadaway, a clinical psychologist.
In today's episode, we're discussing the power of intentional living and how it can help us foster stronger relationships with those who matter most. Whether you're striving to be a more present husband, a more engaged father, or a better friend, this conversation is for you.
Our anchor scripture for today comes from Ephesians 5:15-16. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. This scripture emphasizes living with intentionality, being mindful of how we spend our time, and making choices that reflect our values and our love for the people in our lives. Let's start by exploring the power of intentional living and how it impacts our relationships. So often we find ourselves running on autopilot, especially when we're overwhelmed by work, finances, or just the busyness of life. When we operate this way, the quality of our relationships suffers.
Absolutely, Kevin. Intentional living is about making conscious choices every day to prioritize what's important. When it comes to relationships, this means being deliberate with our time, energy, and attention. It's about ensuring that the people we love know they are valued, not just through words, but through our actions. What are some biblical examples of intentional relationships? One of the most beautiful examples of intentional relationships in the Bible is found in the life of Jesus. Think about how Jesus interacted with people. He wasn't rushed, even when he had a crowd around him. He took time to talk with individuals, like the woman at the well or Zacchaeus. Jesus showed us that true connection comes from giving others our undivided attention.
That's a great example, Michael. Jesus also showed us that intentional relationships mean serving others with love. In John 13:14-15, Jesus washes the disciples' feet, demonstrating love in action. Intentional living in our relationships is about putting the needs of others first, being willing to serve, and being fully present. You may ask how intentionality reflects God's love.
Intentional living is a reflection of God's love for us. In Jeremiah 29:11, God says, "For I know the plans I have for you." God is intentional in everything he does. He has plans for each of us, plans for our good. When we choose to live with purpose, we mirror this attribute of God, reflecting his love in our relationships.
And it's in those small intentional moments, like setting aside time for your spouse, being there for your children, or checking in on a friend, that we show people they are loved, seen, and valued. When we do this, we're living out the gospel because we're treating others the way God treats us. Let's explore practical tips for intentional living in relationships.
So, how can we start living intentionally and build deeper connections? Here are some practical ways to make intentional living a habit. Schedule time for relationships. Make time for your loved ones just like you schedule work meetings. Put it on your calendar, whether it's a date night with your spouse, a game night with your kids, or a coffee catch-up with a friend. Practice active listening. When you're with someone, give them your full attention. Put away the phone, look them in the eyes, and really listen to what they're saying. Active listening shows respect and builds trust. Set intentions each morning. Before you start your day, think about one intentional thing you can do for a significant other in your life. It could be a small note, a word of encouragement, or simply spending extra time with them. It doesn't have to be grand. Small acts done with great love are powerful.
Now, let's talk about some faith-based practices that can support intentional living in relationships. One simple practice is to start your day with prayer for the people in your life. When you lift up your spouse, your children, or your friends in prayer, you're aligning your intentions with God's purpose for those relationships. This not only sets a peaceful tone, but also helps you be more conscious about how you interact throughout the day.
Another great spiritual discipline is reading Scripture together as a family. It doesn't have to be long or formal. Even sharing one verse at the dinner table can spark meaningful conversations and build a deeper spiritual connection with your loved ones. Now, let's talk about our actions. Brothers, ask yourself, are my actions aligned with what I say is important? Are you giving your best time and energy to your significant others, or are they just getting whatever is left over after work, hobbies, and other responsibilities?
Another question to consider is, am I really present with my loved ones, or am I just physically there? Being present means putting aside distractions and fully engaging in the moment. Take time this week to evaluate how you can be more intentional about showing up for the people who matter most.
Here's an exercise for the week. Choose one person in your life. It could be your spouse, a child, or a friend, and do something intentional for them each day. It could be as simple as leaving a kind note or planning a meaningful activity together. Notice how being purposeful in your actions impacts that relationship. What are the impacts of small, consistent actions?
I want to emphasize that building stronger connections isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, consistent actions that add up over time. A kind word, a listening ear, a shared meal, these are the moments where love grows. We're not called to be perfect partners, fathers, or friends, but we are called to be intentional.
That's right, Kevin. Just like Jesus showed us, the seemingly small moments, those times when we stop, listen, and serve, are the moments that build lasting connections. Intentionality means not just letting life happen, but actively creating the relationships we want in the image of God's love. I remember a time when I was struggling to connect with my kiddos. I realized that I was coming home tired from work and giving them whatever energy I had left. When I decided to be more intentional, things began to change. I started setting aside 30 minutes each evening just to be with them. No distractions, no phone, just time together. It wasn't easy, but those moments became some of our most cherished memories. It reminded me that relationships don't grow on their own. They grow when we water them with our time and attention.
That's such a powerful reminder, Michael. I've experienced something similar in my marriage. When I started to put down my work in the evenings and intentionally connect with my wife, it made all the difference. Small changes, a walk together, a meaningful conversation, just being fully present. These things transform relationships over time.
Next week, we'll be discussing overcoming logical fallacies in relationships, strengthening communication. We'll explore how recognizing and overcoming these fallacies can help us communicate more effectively, strengthen our relationships, and stay spiritually grounded during the toughest moments.
As we conclude this episode of Iron Strengthens Iron, we want to remind you that the insights and challenges shared here are meant for educational and motivational purposes. They are not a substitute for professional medical, psychological, or pastoral advice. If you're facing challenges that require personalized care, we encourage you to seek the guidance of a qualified professional in your area.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of faith, strength, and brotherhood. We hope today's message inspires you to embrace your vulnerabilities, rise with resilience, and strengthen the bonds that uplift and support you. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Together we grow stronger.
Thank you for joining us on the Iron Strengthens Iron podcast. We value your feedback. We'd like to know your preference regarding next week's episode topic. Would you prefer to have it automatically included, or would you rather receive notifications for new episodes without the previous topic being featured? Sometimes our podcast topics may shift due to current events, making your input crucial. Please share your preference in the comments. If today's episode encouraged you, share it with someone who needs it. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time on Iron Strengthens Iron podcast. Stay strong in faith and wellness.
Until next time, keep strengthening, stay resilient, and remember, as iron strengthens iron, one man strengthens another.